my friends. If you are new here, welcome. If you are not, welcome back. I love sun flares, so the fact that I have this kind of awesome sun flare to record this right now, I'm going with it. So if we hate the sun flare, you'll just have to let me know in the comments. But I just think sun flares are so cool, and it's a beautiful morning out in the Seattle area, so we're just gonna roll with it. If you are new here, welcome. If you are not, welcome back. My name is Ellen. I'm a burnout and stress management coach. We've been talking about Notion a lot on the channel recently. That actually might be why you found me, is because it was a Notion related video. In today's video, we're kind of going back to the burnout and stress management roots, because I really want to talk today about the things that can burn us out that have nothing to do with career, that have nothing to do with work. So much, I think, for a lot of us, when we think about burnout and stress management, we think about work. We think about the ways in which work can burn us out and stress us out. And I am not downplaying that at all. I know that work and our careers can be a massive contributor to our stress and our burnout. But I start every single talk with the fact that burnout is holistic. Every talk I've ever given, every speech I've ever given, I always say burnout is holistic. And I think that's a really, really important thing to think about, because from my perspective and in my opinion, we can burn ourselves out from literally anything. And in fact, I recently said to one of the clients in my membership to be careful on kind of how much she was putting on her plate, because you can burn yourself out on a burnout recovery journey. Literally anything in our lives can burn us out. And that is actually what I want to talk about in today's video, is the non-work related things that can burn us out. The first non-work thing that I always talk about when it comes to burnout and things that can be a source of burnout in our lives are our relationships. Now, I am actually going to dive into this a little bit more than I did in the podcast that goes along with this and the blog that goes along with this, because frankly, I haven't talked about this necessarily on YouTube. I haven't talked about the role that relationship burnout can play in our lives on YouTube. I will go ahead and link down below a blog and a podcast that I recently did all about this. I actually did a special one for Valentine's Day about can our relationships burn us out. Maybe a little bit of a downer of a topic for Valentine's Day, but a really important one from my perspective to talk about. And what I think is really important for us to think about when it comes to relationship burnout, which is our first source of burnout not related to work, is, in the same way that we can get burned out from, a boss that doesn't appreciate us or a boss that makes us feel undervalued, we can get that same source of burnout from a relationship, a close relationship in our life that makes us feel the same way. If you have a spouse or significant other that makes you feel underappreciated and undervalued, if you have a friendship that makes you feel underappreciated and undervalued, that can contribute to emotional burnout just as much as the work relationships can contribute to emotional burnout. Anytime a relationship feels like it's taking more than it's giving, that can potentially be a source of emotional burnout. But it doesn't just stop there in our relationships. The other kind of side of this is that our social lives can actually burn us out. It is very easy for us to overcommit ourselves socially, take on too much socially. It's not just about taking on too much in terms of our tasks, our goals, our projects, whatever. Sometimes if too much is happening in our social lives, that can burn us out as well. I think of everything that we have going in our lives as being like a plate. Everything, every yes you say yes to, every new commitment, every new to-do that you are putting on your to-do list, that is something else that you are adding to your plate. And for a lot of us, for most of us, frankly, our plates are like American Thanksgiving all day, every day. And as much as I kind of smile and joke about making that analogy, it's not a sustainable analogy. It is not a sustainable place for us to be at, to have that much stuff on our plate day in and day out. And our social commitments and our social lives can add to those things that are on our plate. So we have to really make sure that our social schedules are adapting to the season that we're in. This is really the way I recommend approaching kind of your social life, is if you are in a hustle season with your goals and your work, and we're going to talk about the role that goals play in our burnout and our stress in just a second, But if you're in a hustle season with your goals and with your work, then maybe you need to back off a little bit in terms of your social commitments. Maybe you need to say no a little bit more. But if you're in a season where things are a little bit lighter with your goals and your work, that might be an opportunity where you can beef up the social calendar a little bit more. The bottom line is we don't want our social lives to add to our stress and the burnout that we might already be feeling. We don't want our social lives to be taking from us and taking from our sanity. And if we do feel that way, we just need to do less. That's really what it comes down to. Say no more to your loved ones. Say no more to your relationships, because the people who love you will understand. And if you are finding that you're getting a little bit of pushback, I have found two things to be very successful. Firstly, communicate what you need from your loved ones, and secondly, give them a little bit of context. Like if you just outright say, no, I'm not going to come spend time with you tonight, or no, I'm not going to go to this thing, tell them why. I was talking to a client the other day who actually has a very similar, day job to me. We spend a lot of time day in and day out on one-on-one video calls. And that it can be very, very draining. Like not only are they one-on-one calls, but 90% of the one-on-one calls that we're on, we are leading. So I could do upwards of 25 to 30 hours of one-on-one video calls that I am leading every single week. And it's draining and it's very exhausting. And that's why I often find I spend so much time in solitude, is because I need so much recharge after doing that kind of work. And similarly, so does she. And we talked about the necessity of her communicating that to her relationships and to her family members so they don't feel slighted. They don't feel like she's just ignoring them for the hell of ignoring them. She's ignoring them because she's drained and needs some solitude to rejuvenate after this kind of work over the course of the week. So our relationships can burn us out. Our social lives can burn us out if they are, adding to the commitments that we have on our plate, not taking from them. Those are both sources of burnout that can potentially come, outside of work. A third potential source of burnout is our workouts and our health habits. This is not just me, too, that thinks so. The National Association of Sports Medicine, the NASM, which they are a massive certifying body. They are a massive just body when it comes to personal trainers and people who do health-related and fitness-related work. They have an entire article, and I'm sure multiple of them, but one in particular that I found where they talked about exercise burnout. And the fact that not only does exercise burnout come from multiple factors, but if we don't listen to the signs of exercise burnout and of physical burnout, it can very much derail not only our health goals, but our stress and our burnout levels. And that's important for us to take into consideration because it's even when we have the best intentions. Nobody goes into their health habits or their workouts wanting to burn themselves out, wanting to add to their stress levels. Usually we are doing those things with the best intentions, but ultimately there are a few reasons why those things can burn us out. We burn out from exercise and working out when we find the workouts boring, when we are uninspired or not enjoying what we're doing, when we're sick of being inside. I know for me, that's a big reason why I give myself an out. I give myself permission when it's like this outside, when it's sunny and beautiful outside, to swap out my workout, like my typical indoor workout, for a walk. I'm not a big fan of running. I have a lot of knee injuries, and I always end up like I'm in more pain after a run than I feel like I got a good workout from it. So I'm not a big runner, but I want to enjoy the sunshine, so I like to go for a walk. It doesn't happen a lot in Seattle, though we've had a very abnormal February. I will totally admit that. But that is something that we have to take into consideration is, are you inspired by, are you enjoying, are you not bored by your workouts? On my previous newsletter that I just sent out, or that I will be sending out in the next several days, I talk about a resource that I use when I'm finding I'm getting bored with my workouts. And what I love about it is not only are the trainers diverse in this platform that I use, but the types of workout are diverse. And I need that diversity to stay engaged. Obviously, though, the other big way that our workouts can burn us out is if we are not allowing for adequate recovery. That is one of the things and one of the reasons why I had to kind of step away from doing like defined workout programs, is I never felt like they were giving me enough recovery. I felt like they were just pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And as I get older, as you know, those injuries that I used to play soccer, so I've had multiple knee surgeries and an ankle surgery from playing soccer, those injuries start to flare up again. I'm realizing more and more how much I need to stretch. I need, more active recovery days than I used to need. And when we're not getting that adequate recovery, when we're not sleeping enough, that can burn us out. That can create physical burnout. but it's also not just our workouts. It can be our very health habits. Like, think about all of the stuff out there online. And honestly, I get stuck in the YouTube rabbit holes of people's morning routines as well. You know, you have Sally the influencer who wakes up in the morning at 6 a.m. every single morning, and she, you know, reads for 45 minutes before doing her meditation, and then she stretches for 15 minutes, and then she does gratitudes and affirmations while cooking this like elaborate, beautiful, gorgeous breakfast and sipping on coffee, all before 8 a.m. and the start of her day. And then at the end of the day, she does a second meditation and some yoga flow and reads some nonfiction to wind down for the day. There can be all of these inputs that we get from social media, and I love social media. I'm never shitting on social media. I feel like social media has introduced me to a lot of awesome people, given me so many great ideas, allowed me to, you know, have a reach that I otherwise would not have. But we see a lot of these things, and it makes us feel like we need to do more. Like, these routines that you hear, they sound beautiful, they sound aspirational, but it's also a lot. And the problem for most of us is A, we go from 0 to 60 with our health habits, you know, going from no habits to all the habits. And B, we refuse to accept imperfection. Not only that, but the health habits like this, they don't allow for the day where our meeting runs really long and keeps us at work for an extra 2 hours, or for when your baby won't go down for a nap. Health habits like this don't allow for life to happen because they're a little bit too structured. Whenever I talk about habits and routines now, I talk about this quote from James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits. Great habit book if you haven't read it. Highly recommend you do. I'll drop a link to it in the description, actually. But he always said we need to create habits for our worst days, not our best days. And I love that. I love the notion of that, because what I just painted, this, you know, wake up at 6 a.m., meditate for 15 minutes, you know, this like freaking 2-hour morning routine that you could have, that's wonderful and great, but we can only do that on our best days. We can only do that on the day where we're not groggy in the morning and we wake up, you know, when we've gone to bed exactly when we wanted to. Like, I can go to bed exactly when I want to and still get absolute crap sleep and not be ready to wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning. It doesn't allow for life to happen, and our habits and our routines really need to allow for life to happen. That's what I mean when I say our health habits can burn us out, is sometimes we have so many and our expectations are so high because we're comparing ourselves to Sally the influencer, who, BTW, probably doesn't have kids and has someone else prepping her meals that she doesn't tell you about. We have these crazy expectations implanted in our head of what is necessary to be mindful and stress-free, and that can drive us to burnout as well. I actually learned about something recently in my certification about how purely putting the pressure on yourself to have the most perfect pre-sleep routine can actually make you sleep worse. Sometimes expectations can actually lead to things not going as well when it comes to your habits. They actually have a negative impact because of the pressure that can sometimes go with those expectations. So that is what I mean. My recommendation is keep it simple. Keep your workout simple, keep your habits simple, keep your routine simple. If you want to build routines, build one new habit at a time. And frankly, if something doesn't work, don't force yourself to keep it. A habit and a routine only works if it works for you. Period. End of story. And we've got to nip these elaborate routines in the butt and frankly, keep it simple. KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Or keep it simple. I don't know the non-stupid version of that, but KISS, keep it simple. And that is going to help you a lot more than some elaborate routine where you do every freaking habit known to man. That's going to be a lot better for you. It's just to keep it simple. So we talked about our relationships. We talked about our social lives. We've talked about our workouts and our health habits and how those can burn us out. Our goals can also burn us out. That's the fourth one. And this is like high achiever 101. We love goals. We love projects. We love accomplishing things and achieving things, right? It's what we do as achievers. We put too much on our plates naturally. And because we can be unforgiving and perfectionistic, like we kind of already talked about with health habits and health routines, with expectations and ambitions that frankly far exceed reality, we run ourselves into the ground doing too much. I wrote a newsletter not long ago, which if you want to join my newsletter, I'll go ahead and drop a link for it below. It's coachellen.com/list, I'm pretty sure, but check out the links below. I wrote in a newsletter recently about how I did just that at the start of this year. I got so excited about all of these projects and all of these things that I wanted to do that ultimately I overcommitted myself and I ran myself into the ground. That was a big realization I had at the beginning of February, was that, oh my God, I love all these things. I'm very excited. I want to do them, but it's not practical for me to do them. I am putting too much on my plate. It is not a bad thing to be ambitious. It is not a bad thing to have high standards. It's not a bad thing to have lots of goals. But what we need to do is we need to bring a little bit of practicality into things. I'm not even saying an excessive amount of practicality, just a little bit of practicality into things. We need to constantly ask ourselves, do I actually have enough time to do these things? I did a podcast recently that I'll go ahead and link down below as well. There's going to be so many links down below. And I hinted in a recent podcast that yes, there is actually enough hours in the day to do all of the things. There's always enough time in the day. But if we're feeling like there isn't, it's because we've A, overcommitted ourselves, and B, we just need to adjust our timelines. And that's actually what I was finding for myself. I can do all of these things that I want to do, and I can frankly do them this year, but I'm probably not going to be able to do them in the first quarter of this year. So I just needed to adjust my timeline a little bit. Our goals are never too big. Our timelines are often too small. And if we are finding that our goals are burning us out and our goals are one of the biggest contributors to our stress and our burnout, that is the adjustment that we need to make. We need to not let our inner perfectionist get in the way and just make some adjustments to those timelines and those unrealistic expectations, or they're just going to drive us into the ground. So our goals are another big thing that can burn us out. And those are some of the things that I think we need to keep in mind to make sure that they don't. I've got two more big things for you. And the next one is our environment. Our environment is another big non-work thing that can potentially burn us out. This is a little bit of an abstract one, but speaking as someone who is planning on moving apartments at the end of their lease because my current apartment isn't conducive to good rest in any of its forms, I definitely believe that our environments can burn us out. But that's not the only way that our environments can burn us out. You know, it's not just, oh, I can't get good sleep and I can't get solitude and I can't get good rest in this apartment. In my memberships, we have talked about the tidying movement and how so many people are living with less and trying to be more organized. You know, there's Marie Kondo, there's the home edit, there's tiny homes, there's minimalism. I'm doing a no spend challenge right now because I've realized that I, A, don't want more stuff, and B, have a tendency to numb and shop for stuff when I don't want to deal with my emotions. That's the big reason why I'm doing a no spend challenge right now. But it's not just me waving my hands either. There's a researcher at DePaul University whose name is Dr. Joseph Ferrari, who pegged that, you know, having more clutter and less and more stuff on your desk, it leads to less productivity, it leads to higher burnout, and it leads to more emotional burnout. And so Dr. Joseph Ferrari, he published that in the International Journal of Psychological Research. And there's actually another UCLA study that they tied clutter directly to stress levels, particularly in women. This is something that science has supported as well. But I feel like it's so practical. Like, think about how peaceful it feels when the counters are clean and there are no dishes to do or no dishwashers to unload. The carpets are vacuumed, the laundry is folded, the bed is made, the clothes are all put away. It honestly sounds so perfect that it seems like a dream to me. But that's what I mean. When our environment is clean and decluttered and calming and peaceful, or at least very conducive to those things, it makes such a massive difference in our stress and our ability to recover at the end of the day. But your environment doesn't just stop with, you know, your physical space that you're in. Your environment is also the stuff right outside your physical living space. If you don't live in a place where you feel safe, that's going to impact your stress and your ability to unwind. If your basic needs, you know, a grocery store, a gas station, doctor's offices aren't accessible and nearby in your environment, that's going to impact your stress and your burnout. If you don't have connections and close relationships nearby, that's going to impact your environment. It's even the little things. You know, for me, I really prioritize it. Something so little, but it makes such a big difference for me. Having a trail nearby that I can go for walks at, that impacts my burnout and my stress. When I live in a place where I don't have that, that's really hard for me. Our environment and the ways it impacts our burnout are very nuanced and very complex. So I basically am saying don't sleep on it. definitely make sure that you're thinking about this when you're thinking about your environment and your burnout, because environment matters. Absolutely. Last but not least, and things that can impact our burnout, is our mindset. So much of the work I do is about shifting our mindsets away from perfectionism, away from always doing more, away from hustle, away from chasing busyness as the only avenue for success. You know, my content in my coaching has shifted quite a bit, especially over the last month or so. I used to say all the time, I'm going to help you achieve more with less burnout. And now my focus is much more on, I don't want you to achieve more with less burnout. I want you to work less and live more. That has become more of the focus of my work and the stuff that I do in my business. Because the fact of the matter is, so many of us have been rewarded for doing more in our lives. Like our entire lives, we have been rewarded. We have been overscheduled since we were teenagers, and we've been rewarded for that. We've been praised for all of the things that we can juggle and all the plates that we can keep in the air. Like the ninja at work who can handle like 80 bajillion projects at once, or the super mom who has like 6 kids and can get them to all the places they need to be and do it all and make it look easy. We are praised and validated for that in our lives. And some of us thrive on that external validation. I absolutely do. I am an Enneagram 3. My love language is words of affirmation. I am externally validated to boot. It's kind of the perfect storm of external validation, I feel like. And I had to question myself of, yes, I've been validated for this my entire life. I could probably do all of the things. I could probably do it well. But the question isn't, can I do it? The question is, do I want to? And I realized that I don't want that lifestyle anymore. One of the things I'm actually thinking about with the fact that I want to move is I'm thinking about downsizing, because I'm thinking about moving into a studio because I just want to have less shit in my life. So it's like, sure, I can do all of these things. I can have all of this stuff. I can do all of this more in my life, but I don't want that anymore. And that's where the mindset shift comes from. That's where awareness comes in. To have the ability to look at your life and say, yeah, I can do this, but I don't want it. That is a powerfully impactful observation to make. And until we can step into that, as soon as we can step into that mindset and kind of give ourselves permission to do less, we're going to constantly burn ourselves out. It's about making those mindset shifts. The mindset shifts, like so many of the mindset shifts that we make in our lives, come down to giving ourselves permission. Giving ourselves permission to want something different, to do something different, to have different values. And until we can give ourselves that permission to make that shift, burnout's going to persist. You may have heard me say, I don't know how much I've said it on YouTube per se, but if you've checked out my website, you may have seen on there that I say burnout happens, but staying burned out is a choice. This mindset is actually where this statement comes from, because so many of us, the burnout in our lives is coming from the choices that we're making. And sometimes we make choices because we feel like we have to. We feel like we're forced to, like we're stuck. Our external circumstances are driving us toward this, and we have no choice but to make this decision. And I feel like we're not. We have more choice and more control than we think we do. We're not as trapped as we think we are. And as soon as we can realize and accept that, that's when the massive changes start to happen. Are there some parts of life that are going to just be shit and that we have to deal with? Yeah, absolutely. But I think we have more control than we think we do. And as soon as we embrace that and step into that and realize that we are choosing some of the things that are creating burnout in our life, we're choosing to say yes to things. We are choosing to not have boundaries. We are choosing some of those things. And as soon as we realize that we don't have to, that's when things start to shift. So much of my content is about learning to recognize the mindset shifts. That's hard to say. So much of my content is about learning to recognize the mindset shifts that are holding us back and how to work around those mindset shifts. And that is really one of the biggest goals that I have when it comes to helping people work less and live more. So if you need support with this, I've dropped some links below. I've got some very, very affordable low ticket memberships. I've got some coaching options. If one of these in particular jumped out at you as, holy crap, I do that. That is a big source of burnout in my life. I really need help, but you don't know where to start. I do one-off coaching sessions, so I'll go ahead and drop a link to that, you just set it up on my scheduling page. But these are the non-work sources of burnout that I see and that I find in our lives. And if you've got anything to add, if you disagree with one of them, maybe you disagree with the final part I said about mindset, which I could totally see people would, drop some comments below. Like, obviously, let's keep it civil, but I'd love to hear some of your thoughts and your opinions on this. Is there one of these that is more of a source of burnout to you than another? And what are you doing about it? Go ahead and drop a comment below. But once again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you next time.